welcome again to the chat. As you know, I love speaking to people from the wider racing and breeding industries. And joining me today from The Age is Chief Racing Reporter in Damien Ractliffe. G'day, Damo. How are you, mate?
Good, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me on the chat.
No worries at all. I must say, what we were saying off air first up, it would be nice to be in Darwin today for Darwin Cup Day. It looks like a good day up there.
Any excuse to escape the Melbourne winter and watch some racing and, as we said off air, sink a couple of drinks in the hot weather. I'd rather be there than here, but not to be this year.
And away from your main role as a journalist at The Age, can you tell me about Next Gen of Racing? You've recently set that up in the last couple of years.
Yeah, sure. It was probably early 2020 off the top of my head. I'm trying to remember the years with COVID, but decided to start up a bit of a social group where people our age, Ben, in our 30s and 40s and late 20s could get along to the races and feel like they could fit into a scene, whether it was a function space or a day out on the lawn and network opportunities. The idea of Next Gen came up to host some events, and we had a launch event at Moonee Valley. It must have been February 2020, and then obviously COVID hit the next month. We probably had 100 to 150 people that night in the Ladbrokes Lounge at Moonee Valley, and thought it was a pretty good night. And then obviously COVID hit, and Hayden Byrne, who I do a bit of stuff with, he works with Vince Accardi and Daily Sectionals. We decided to pivot to a podcast and a YouTube show. So we've done that for the last 2 years, and now that the world's opening up again, we've got back into the event space. So we held a golf day in autumn and raised $4,000 for the Royal Children's Hospital that day. And the idea is we can host these events and partner with some charities. And clearly it's non-for-profit, but just give guys and girls your age and my age the chance to come along to different events and experience different function spaces at the races. We've partnered with Thoroughbred Breeders Victoria before for a couple of info sessions out at Inglis. Those sort of opportunities. We took a group out to Living Legends one day. And we've obviously got a little race club where we've got 5% in 5 horses, and there's 50 owners in that are getting a taste of the ownership experience as well.
Away from covering and going to the races, what does Damien Ractliffe like to do in his spare time?
I'm getting into golf at the moment, Ben. My footy and cricket days my footy days are over, and I'm too busy on a Saturday during spring and summer to play cricket anymore. So golf's the new passion. And obviously I've got a nearly 1-year-old that's keeping my hands full as well, Ben. So there's if I get a bit of spare time, it's trying to find the golf course. But obviously racing keeps me busy. I can sit there on a Saturday and watch the races. I'm on leave at the moment, but I'm still pretty interested in the races, certainly on a Saturday.
You talk about just your spare time. Obviously, Spring Carnival is very busy, but it's going to be very exciting this year because we're going to have full crowds back and hopefully more international runners as well.
Yeah, that's right. Look, we obviously, Racing Victoria made those announcements last year, tightening up the vetting protocols. They brought in the scintigraphy, which really wasn't widely received well over in Europe. And I think we might have had 8 or 10 horses here, not many on 2-way tickets. There were a number of them that were just on the 1-way tickets. But obviously, Joseph O'Brien jumped through the hoops with State of Rest and won a Cox Plate. And then obviously Spanish Mission came across for the Melbourne Cup and placed and stayed here with Peter Moody after he was bought by Australian owners. So, I think this year, now that they've dropped the mandatory component of the scintigraphy, I think we'll see more horses this year. That was the main sticking point for Aidan O'Brien. And we know when Aidan brings horses here, they're generally pretty competitive. So it'd be good for Aidan to bring a handful back this year. We haven't seen Godolphin for a number of years. So I'd love to see Charlie Appleby or Saeed bin Saror target a couple for the spring this year. And that the Japanese is still an issue. Obviously, the Japanese, the strappers like to be on the plane with their horses, and I think that's still prohibited at the moment with the travel requirements from Japan. So unless that's eased soon, we might not see the Japanese this year, which is a real shame because their form generally stands up here with the way we run our races. But look, I think we'll get more than a dozen international horses this year, and perhaps closer to the 15 to 18 mark. And I think we still need to have that international representation for our racers to stand up on the world stage and have their credentials underlined.
Talk about Australian racing standing up on the world stage. Do you feel that the media coverage and marketing of racing here in Australia is going in the right direction at the moment to encourage that?
Oh, look, we sent horses like Nature Strip and Artorias and Home Affairs over to Ascot, and obviously Nature Strip blew them away, and Artorias was very competitive. Things didn't go right for Home Affairs. I probably just went too quick early and was left exposed late in a big field. But, Australia, our sprint stocks stand up on the world stage. And I think there's no doubt if some of our middle distance horses like Wings, for example, was, her credentials, stand up there. I'm looking forward to seeing what Very Elegant does when she gets the chance to compete in France and perhaps target an arc. But our racing stands up against the best in the world. I think racing does a pretty good job. Our racing's world class. What we probably have a little bit different is the amount of Group 1 ones we have in this country compared to, say, Japan, where their programs, they've got a traditional race pattern where you work through the group races and everyone targets the Group 1 race, and we just seem to have probably too many Group 1s. And if you went through the list of Group 1 winners last season, there's probably only 10 or 12 that you consider genuine superstars of the sport, but we've got whatever it is, 100 Group 1 winners a season. So, if we're talking about comparing jurisdictions, that would probably be my one bugbear, that we probably do have too many Group 1 races that aren't the top echelon of their distance and weight for age range.
And the prize money increases in the Ewing sale prices have continued to be strong. Who would have thought when we're in COVID, people, what do? They can't go on a holiday, so they put their money into the racing industry and buy more horses.
Yeah, and we've seen that. We've seen that in the racing game. We saw that in property. People weren't able to spend money overseas and had a lot more discretionary money. We've seen it in the wagering figures. Racing was lucky. It was one of the sports that continued, and people had money to spend, and they spent it on the punt. Now that all that money that has poured into Australian property and racing, as you said, it's driven inflation now, and now interest rates are rising, and people are tightening the belt a bit. So it'll be interesting to see whether those yearling prices are sustainable. The racing authorities say that they wouldn't be boosting prize money unless they thought those prize money levels were sustainable. So that'll be interesting going forward. But you'd think that wagering numbers would have to drop off at some point because people, their wallets are going to get tighter now that interest rates are going up. And then obviously the next big story is what the wagering deal looks like for the Victorian licence. I think that tab deal finishes in 2024, and I think we're going to see a totally different landscape in that wagering space.
Away from racing, do you have any other sports you like to cover or follow?
Yeah, well, I cover a lot of sports for the age. Obviously, AFL dominates the media market here. So, I'm on AFL. I'm an AFL tragic, played footy my whole life. Love cricket, but the great thing about Australia is we have so many major events. We've got the ICC Cricket T20 competition coming to Australia later this year. It won't be long until the Commonwealth Games rolls around. I caught some highlights this morning. I'm not really staying up and watching the Commonwealth Games, but certainly keeping an eye on the results and, the US Open, the recent golf tournaments, the British Open that Cam Smith won. I'm a sports tragic, Ben, so if it's not racing, it's footy or cricket or golf or, whenever we've got an Australian representing on the world stage. I was up watching Kyrgios at Wimbledon. So, all sports sort of capture my imagination.
I always want to be a journalist. I first remember seeing your byline quite a few years ago now in the Geelong Advertiser.
Yeah, pretty much since the age of 16, I wanted to be a journalist, and I'm 31 now, Ben, so that's half my life basically chasing this. So, been at the age for nearly 3 years now, and I was 2 years and 8 months at the Geelong Addy. A long time ago, I did some producing at RSN for Shane Anderson and Nadia Horn, and that's how I really got into racing first off, and was part of the G1X crew for a year or two there when G1X was up and running. So, I've tasted racing throughout my journalism journey, and it's it's gone from racing to covering all sports to back covering the niche of racing to covering all sports at the Geelong Addy, and now obviously racing again is the niche at the age. But obviously racing dominates the pages after footy season's done. But outside of that, yeah, I've had to be a bit flexible and cover other sports as well.
Where does your love and interest in racing come from? Like, was it just from working at RSN, or did you sort of have the bug before then?
Yeah, look, RSN gave me the taste of like the full-time job, what the sport's like, what the participants are like. Getting guests on the radio to chat with Shane and Nadia, that was a job for a while there. So that's where it sort of first started, obviously. And when you're 18, 19, you have a bet with mates and you discover the passion for the horses and the punt, obviously. But I don't really need the punt to enjoy the races. I love the storylines. I love seeing the Group 1 horses chase the great races. I love to incentivise this prep last year where they went from Queensland and worked through the Group 1 races, winning them at Kaibi Diva and the Turnbull off the top of my head. And that Caulfield Cup win was up there with one of the best wins I've seen. And then obviously having a crack at the Melbourne Cup and falling just short. Like, I love those storylines where those great horses, have a real crack at trying to do what other horses haven't done before. And, I'd love to see more horses try and win the Cox Plate and go on to a Melbourne Cup. We saw Russian Camelot have a crack at that prep and, Very Elegant went through that path. And, it's been a while since a horse has won the Cox Plate and the Melbourne Cup, but I'd love to see a horse try and do that.
Can you tell me a bit about your racehorse ownership journey? You obviously have the Next Gen Syndicate, but have you had any shares yourself previously, Damien?
I think one of my first horses was a mid-Kent senior horse called Supergrass, who won a couple of races. Kristen Manning got me into that horse and had a little bit of fun with him. Had a little share in a horse with Mitch Beer called Royal Parade. I actually proposed that name and they went with it. And I'm not sure if she broke her maiden, but she had a few starts for Mitch and didn't quite get up to the grade. I then had a little share in one with Dream Thoroughbreds called Soul Star, and she was a nice mare. Won a couple of races midweeks, competed in town on a Saturday, didn't quite make the grade, but got our money back there as a broodmare when she went through the broodmare sales. I think she's out at Widden now and has Sunlight in her family, so they've partnered her with Zoo Star, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Zoo Star Soul Star yearling reach the ring, I think, later this year. So that'll be interesting there. When you've had ownership in a mare and see their progeny come through. And then obviously the 5 shares we have in Next Gen, great interest there. But one of them, Clave Moore for Gemma Riley, made it into the Group 1 South Australian Derby. It didn't pan out on the day. We probably got mixed up in that early speed, and it ended up being a fast run race, and he sort of tired late, but looking forward to seeing him back at the races. And, some of the other horses we've got at the moment, Screaming Diva for First Light Racing. She's had 3 starts for 3 seconds. She resumed at Pakenham last week and ran a nice second. So hopefully we're in for a good prep with her. Defiant Diva with Bennett Racing and Troy Corson. She won at Sandown a couple of weeks ago, and she's running at Flemington this Saturday, Ben, in the 1,400-metre benchmark 84, I think, for fillies and mares. So be exciting to see how she measures up going from a midweek win to Saturday grade. And then a couple of others. Lawbreaker with Dream Thoroughbreds has placed a couple of times now. Guzmao with Mitch Freedman, again, I think he's placed 3 or 4 times. I think I've covered them off there. Yeah, our 5 shares. So, yeah, the idea was to get 5% in 5 horses with different stables, different trainers, different syndicators. And, again, when they've got an open day, we can head along. When they've got a stable parade, just 5 different networks for our, next gen owners to experience different parts of the racing industry.
One last one, Damien. You said you love the storylines. How much do you spend on social media looking for story ideas, but using as an information source? Because unfortunately, sometimes you look at some of the negativity on social media and like the industry participants being trolled. That's the bad side, but social media has a good side too.
Yeah, it does. Look, social media, it's part of the whole media landscape now. But look, chatting to people in the industry is the best way to get stories, whether it's negative or positive, or getting out to the races and actually talking to people on course. And, you know, you would know better than anyone, networking and actually meeting people face to face and building that rapport in person is the best way to get a story. So that probably answers your question. Social media, everyone seems to have an opinion on social media, which they're entitled to have. So I try not to get too involved in whatever's going on social media. I'll chuck my opinion out there now and again, but I just try and stick to the facts with my story. I don't write many opinion pieces for the Age. I like to sort of stick to news.
Thanks, Ractliffe. Thanks for joining me, mate. Appreciate it.
Anytime, Ben. Thanks for having me.